Right, something a little bit different, and say a bit of a quick one. It's what I want to go through is preparation of meat. So it's something, again, I see a massive mistake a lot when I'm coaching, is people preparing the meat, not wrong, just being lazy. I mean, just literally cracking it open, cubing it up, chucking it in some water, and they think that's all right. It's really, really not. If you want to fish meat properly in certain situations, then you've got to prep it so it does what you want it to do, because it can be a right nightmare of a bait. You can see there, I've done a couple of tins. I've put one straight in water, which is what you see most people do. Cube a tin of meat, straight in water, leave it, fish with it. What you find with meat that's like that, because it's so full of fat, yeah, it sinks at weird rates. So it sinks all over the place. You get some that goes to the bottom, some that loiters and never even sinks at all, and the odd bit that even floats. I mean, it's nasty. You can see in that just covering it in water. Do you know what I mean? It's buoyant and horrible. The last thing it is heavy bait, and that's because of the fat content. I mean, the fat content in the meat makes it very, very, very buoyant. It wants to float all over the place, and these geese are going to come and eat me meat. So what I want to show you is how to prepare it for the right situations. I mean, if I want to fish shallow, then that might not be a bad idea. Fishing meat straight out of a tin. I mean, just covering it in water so it's not really saturated. Then it can be nice catapulting. It'll sink nice and slow and it'll catch fish, which is great. But anytime you want to fish meat on the bottom, and especially if you get any water movement, if you got any tow or a bit of wind on the water, whatever, and the water's moving about, if you try and feed meat in its natural state, sort of, it ain't gonna happen. Do you know what I mean? You're feeding the next fella's peg. It's gonna be 1, 2, 3 pegs down. Who knows? It's never gonna be where you're putting it. So just with a few little steps or 2 different ways you can actually do it, you can make your meat a lot nicer. You know what I mean? And get it to go down on the bottom. So the simplest way is what we're gonna rock out first. I've borrowed my mate's posh carpy kettle. And what I'm gonna do, the biggest thing that I do with my meat, when I'm using big amounts, if I'm using 3, 4, 5 tins, whatever, it's just cover it in boiling water. So simply by covering that completely in boiling water without burning my fingers off, it's amazing just how much fat comes off it. So by making that really, really hot, all the fat, not solidifies, I don't know what it is, it disperses into the water, sort of like breaks down in the meat. So I can give that a big stir, and you see you end up with a very, very milky water. Yeah, just by giving that a few minutes for all the fats to come out of the meat, or the vast majority of the fats to come out of the meat. You still want a little bit, because I definitely think that the fat content is a big attractor to the fish. They definitely know that it's there, and say it makes the meat appealing to the fish. This duck's definitely going to eat my meat, isn't it, Rich? That sounded wrong, didn't it? But anyway, right, you can see straight away how milky that's become. I mean, really, really, really milky, and I'll actually leave that. What I'll do, if I was going to do that really properly, I'll probably do it 2 or 3 times. I mean, I'll just cover my meat in water once. You know what I mean? Give it a good stir. Give it probably 2 or 3 minutes just to get everything off it. Drain it off, and then I'll do it again. You know what I mean? So I'll do really quickly now. So I'll literally drain that off. Get it all off. Back in the tub. You can see it just looks different straight away. It looks a lot more rubbery as soon as you get that fat off it. So I'm going to do it again just to get that fat out the water so it isn't mixing around. I'm definitely going to burn my fingers off with this flipping kettle. So doing that again. So you see each time you do it, if you do it 2, even 3, probably 3 times, yeah, 3 times max, you find that each time you add water to it, it just takes a little bit less fat. I mean, it look really milky the first time. It looks a little bit, it goes a bit clearer each time you do it. But I keep whizzing that about. Give that 10 more seconds. Drain that off. And you can see if I don't burn my fingers off, I'll put a little bit of cold water on that. If you have a look at the meat, if Rich has a little zoom in if you can in a minute, yeah, that's cold, that one's all right. So the meat just looks completely different. You can see how fatty this one is. It's got a massive amount of fat content in it, which what makes it so buoyant and makes it waft all over the place. Whereas meat that's been sort of almost boiled, if you like, it's been treated with a little bit of boiling water, it's got rid of 90% of that fat's gone out of the meat, or a lot of the loose fat's gone out of the meat. It just makes it a far much more better bait that I can now feed, and pretty much all of it's going to go to the bottom and stay on the bottom where I want it to do. So the last thing I want is for it to be all over the place and make it very difficult for me to both fish over and for me to get bites over. So that'd be my first way of doing it, is getting all the fat out of my meat is with a kettle. Obviously a bit fiddly, and it means you've got to do it at home. Yeah, as a last resort, the next thing that I've been doing a little bit recently is adding a very sugary based liquid. So if I get rid of that water on that one, so that's my fatty meat that's a bit nasty. And by using that F1 booster spray, I've used that one, or the sweet corn one. Do a sweet corn booster spray, which is something I used years and years and years ago. A different company used to make it. It was a sweet corn spray for meat. I think it was It was a chap called Gary Skerritt that made it very, very popular up here. And initially everyone thought it was the yellow meat that made things really good because it dyed them yellow, where in fact it wasn't so much the colour of the meat, it was the fact that you put this like glycerin sugary based spray, which this is exactly the same sort of thing, on top of your meat, and it helps to break down the fat. So just with a load of sprays on top of my meat, you see immediately it sort of changes it. Straight away it changes that meat. So it doesn't look anywhere near, let's get some fatty stuff out the corner. It doesn't look anywhere near as fatty. You know what I mean? It's sort of the sugar makes it come out and brings brings a massive proportion of the fat out of the meat. And again, makes it nice and clean, easier to use, and makes it sink far more better. Keeps it on the bottom where you want it to be, instead of it floating all over the place, making them fish very, very difficult to catch. Say the downfall of it is you have to use a lot of that for a lot of meat. If you're going to use 5 or 6 tins of meat, then you're going to go through a whole bottle of spray, which I mean can get a bit expensive, but it's still good stuff and nice, easy to use on the bank. But if you have time, prepping it properly with some boiling water, that'll make a huge difference to your meat fishing and put more fish on the bank.